for. So we are an independent agency of the Government of Ontario. We're a provincial crown corporation. We are responsible for regulating Ontario's capital markets and also the enforcement of the rules. So our mandate is to provide protection to investors and unfair, improper, or fraudulent practices, to foster fair and efficient capital markets, confidence in capital markets, and contribute to the stability of the financial system and the reduction of systemic risk. It's quite a mouthful, but we have probably 15 or 16 different branches of the commission. There are about upwards of 600 staff members now. The branch is just one of the branches. We have about 150 or 160 members, staff members in the enforcement branch. So I just want to talk today a little bit about avoiding investment fraud and some of the red flags, some of the things to watch for, just to give you some information. A few of the things we'll cover is how big is the investment fraud problem. Just a few examples of typical investment frauds, some of the scams we see, things to look out for, and just some ways that you can protect yourself. So studies have shown that in Canada, about 1 in 25 Canadians say they're a victim of investment fraud. So that's over 1.5 million Canadians report that they've been a victim of investment fraud. It's not other types of frauds, it's specifically investment frauds. 1 in 5 Canadians say they've been approached about a potential fraudulent scheme. Only 1 in 3 Canadians who have been approached actually reported it. So we know the numbers are much greater than what are actually reported. Back when COVID started, March of last year, we at the OSC and the enforcement branch, we have a pretty strong partnership with various law enforcement agencies, in particular the RCMP Integrated Market Enforcement Team. They actually have offices right in the same building as the OSC in downtown Toronto. So we issued a public alert from the public about some scams that we foresaw would be on the horizon with respect to sort of related scams. So we, as I mentioned, we work closely with law enforcement and we try and coordinate our efforts, share information, and work collaboratively as best we can. Some of the COVID-related frauds that we're seeing, there's warnings about your finances. Sometimes you're contacted with warnings about your investments or finances, and people request sensitive financial or personal information. Unless you're absolutely 100% sure who you're talking to, just should never give out personal information. There's fake government messages floating around. You'll receive a text or an email. Many of them aren't investment related. They're more related to government benefit programs like the CERB program. People are getting their accounts, their CRA accounts taken over. Payments are set up in fraudulent names. Advanced fee loans. People are being contacted. I guess the scammers are playing on financial securities right now. There's a lot of people who are struggling. They'll say, hey, listen, we can loan you $1,000, for example, but we need you to give us a $1,000 payment up front to help us with the processing fees. And then you'll get your check for $10,000. Of course, once you put the money up, you'll never hear from them again. There's work from home scams going on where, we've had people contacted with opportunities to earn high profits at home as a securities or derivatives trader. They're being told they don't require any training or licensing, which of course is completely fraudulent. And as with many of the other scams, they're told to put up some money up front in order to fund the startup. And of course, once they put their money in, it's gone. So some of the other scams we're seeing that, and they relate to COVID-related matters, but just other matters in general. One of the scams is called a pump and dump scheme. And, the fraudsters will target anybody they think might have money. So what they do is the fraudsters will buy up large blocks of shares in lightly traded companies, and then they start promoting the stock. And generally, these companies have little or no actual business activity, but the fraudsters are hyping the company, and they come up with all kinds of fake claims and and COVID related, they'll say they have some sort of a miracle cure, or they're working on a vaccine. So they build up the hype, and with the hype comes an increase in the share value. And when the fraudsters think the share value is peaked out, they start feeding their shares back into the secondary market to the retail investors like all of us. And of course, it becomes known in short order that the promotions that they've been doing were just nothing but lies, and the share value plummets. The fraudsters have made off with all the money, and everybody else is left holding worthless shares. So this kind of pump and dump schemes, they happen all the time. Sometimes they're right now some of them are COVID related, but they're commonly, these pump schemes are commonly done. Affinity fraud. Fraud will target a group, whether it's a cultural, religious, particular occupation. I had one fraudster in the Ottawa area actually targeted a hockey team. He was playing on the team, and he managed to lure in a number of players. So they approach potential victims through a group, the organization that they belong to. When they develop some relationships and trust, then they start to slowly introduce their scheme to the group, and they play on people's trust. Ponzi schemes are another form of investment scam. It all was named after a guy named Ponzi back in the 18th century, 19th century. So what they do is they come up with some scheme, some investment scheme that sounds good to be true. They get people to put money in, promising a return of whatever percentage it might be. Money that's coming in from the later investors is used to pay interest to the early investors. So investor one gets interest from investor two, and then it just keeps compounding, where the new investors' money is paying, a portion of it is paying interest to the earlier investors. But eventually the money, the incoming money dries up, and it's not sustainable. Bernie Madoff in the United States was probably the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. It was, I think, somewhere in the range of 60 or 80 billion dollars. So he's in prison right now for the rest of his life. So, when you get offers of investments with guaranteed returns or little to no risk, those are huge red flags. Of course, these fraudsters will not give up. They often will come back to the well and try and squeeze a bit more money out of people. They create, reuse, and sell lists of victims. If you've been a victim of an investment fraud once, it's not uncommon to be approached after the fact. What they do often is they'll contact somebody who's been a victim of investment fraud and claim to represent an investor group. They'll say, "Okay, I understand you invested in whatever company it is. We know that it's been the whole operation was a fraud. We are getting together as an investor group, law firm. We think we've got a really good class action lawsuit. We think we can get money back for everybody, but we need all of you to contribute X amount of dollars to help fund this lawsuit." So they try and get people to pay into that. Now, that's just one of the variations of it, but essentially they're coming back and they're revising people. Studies have shown that 3 out of 10 fraud victims are frauded more than once. So it's just something to watch out for. So some of the warning signs of fraud: high pressure sales tactics. Sometimes they say you got to invest now. This is only a limited time opportunity. Probably a huge red flag, one of the biggest ones, is receiving a phone call, an email, or text message from someone you don't know. They claim to be representing a particular company or sometimes a government agency. And if you're not sure, get their name, look up the actual number for the agency or the company on the internet, call the company, and say, do you have a person working with you by the name of whatever the person's name represented themselves to be, and just to confirm that the person you're dealing with is in fact legitimate. Sometimes they'll offer free incentive, a lunch or dinner or some a commission if you refer a neighbor or a friend. They'll promise high or guaranteed returns with little to no risk. Well, that just doesn't happen. encouraged to, as I mentioned, encouraged to recruit friends or family. And the individuals are not registered with the Securities Commission. That's another huge red flag. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Sometimes they'll suggest falsifying financial information. To be eligible to purchase certain investments in the exempt market, you need to be what's called an accredited investor. And that means you have an income of a certain level and a net worth of a certain level. And there's a form that the people selling these investments are supposed to have the investor sign, just certifying that you are in fact an accredited investor, and that makes you eligible to purchase the investment in whatever particular company it is. Sometimes the fraudsters will ask you to falsify information on that form, so that makes you eligible. Sometimes they sell investments as tax avoidance strategies. We've seen a number of these. So we always recommend, if you're not sure, check with your accountant, check with a legitimate financial advisor, call the CRA, and find out in advance if in fact what they're pitching is a legitimate tax avoidance strategy. Sometimes they'll claim that you can act on inside information or a hot scoop. Well, this is insider trading. If it's information that's not readily available to the public, it's insider information and it's illegal. So protect your money. You need to be skeptical. Nobody cares more about your money than you. So you need to really question unsolicited investment opportunities over the phone, online, or from acquaintances. If you're considering an investment, get a second opinion before you invest. Consider asking a registered, qualified advisor, your accountant, pass them and get an opinion. Take the time you need. Be suspicious of time-limited offers, as I mentioned, and high-pressure sales tactics. If the investment is legitimate, you shouldn't have to invest on the spot. You should always be given the time you need to do your homework, do your due diligence, and make your decision. Do your homework before you make any investment. Understand how it works, the risks, and any fees. And before dealing with anybody with respect to investments, contact the OSC. The number's on the screen and it'll be on the presentation that we forward, but it's 1-877-785-1555. Any deals or sells investments or advises with respect to investments in the province of Ontario needs to be registered with the OSC. And to get registered, that means they have to be properly trained, they have to meet certain standards. And when someone's registered, you have protections as well from, there's various programs in place to protect you if something should go wrong, if the person should happen to go astray and not be following the rules. But if they're not registered, you don't have those protections. So to find out about registration, you do a background check. Contact us at the OSC at the number on the screen. Always check the registration of any person or business trying to sell you an investment or give you advice. And as I mentioned, it helps protect you from unqualified fraudulent individuals. If you suspect a scam, give us a call. We have a contact center. It's sort of the incoming information goes to our inquiries and contact center. It's staffed by real people. They're very, very helpful. They can answer questions on just about anything investment related. And if they don't have the answer to your question, they will find out and they'll point you in the right direction. But the staff there are really helpful, and they deal with probably 4,000 or 5,000 calls a year from investors. Sometimes it's reporting people have been scammed. More often it's just calling to check registration, which you can do online as well, which I'll touch on in a second. But if you have any questions at all about your investments, if you're not sure about something, number, somebody will speak to you and get answers to your questions. If you think you've been a victim of an investment fraud, you can also call the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center at the number on the screen, or of course, local police service. And all these agencies, we coordinate everything. So if a matter is reported to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center and it's something that the OSC needs to know about, they will forward the information to us. Same as the local police, we refer matters to the police, they refer matters to us. So, if you make a report, you can rest assured that it will land with the appropriate agency within whose mandate the matter falls. there's lots of different resources available that are offered by the OSC. I'll just touch on. Probably one of the best is a website managed by our Office of the Investor at the OSC. It's called getsmarteraboutmoney.com or .ca, whatever it is. It's a great website. There's all kinds of great information about investing basics, planning for your future. There's some particular information with respect to COVID-19 in your money. There's all kinds of information on the website that's really useful. And part of what's on there is a wills and estate planning section. So what we always recommend people do is write down all your passwords, and there's a form it's a personal information inventory form on the website where you can write down all your passwords, anything that anybody, your family or your beneficiaries might need to know in the event of an untimely passing. It also outlines ways to meet the financial needs of your family members. If you die or become incapable of managing your affairs, steps to minimize taxes that you or your estate might pay, and a plan to sell or pass on your ownership stake in a business, perhaps. It touches on wills, powers of attorney, insurance, trust, business or partnership agreements. So as I mentioned, it's a good idea to just take the time to do it, and you might pick up some on things that you might have not otherwise been aware of. There's information on crypto assets. This whole crypto thing can be a little confusing. There's all sorts of cryptocurrencies out there. I don't profess to know everything about it, but it can be very confusing. A lot of investments involving crypto trading platforms. I think many people have heard of Bitcoin, but there's literally hundreds of other crypto assets. So they're digital currency. They're not legal tender. There's a lot of volatility in the price. It's an evolving regulatory landscape. Depending on how these crypto entities are structured, they may or may not need to be registered. So if there's questions about crypto investments, call the OSC, and they'll give you answers to your questions. And another website managed by the OSC, getsmarteraboutcrypto.ca, which is on the screen. It has a lot of good information if you're considering investing in the crypto space. Other resources on the website, on the Get Smarter About Money website, information about investment products, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, real estate investment, worksheet. There's some great worksheets on budgeting, on retirement cash flow, financial goals worksheet. So they're Excel spreadsheets, you can enter numbers into them, and then you can save them and go back to them. So they're really helpful. Life events, planning for your future, things like buying a home, inheriting money, living your retirement. As I mentioned, there's lots of great calculators, emergency fund calculator, spending habits calculator, RIF withdrawal calculator, cash flow calculator, information on planning and managing your money, working with an advisor, sort of, what you can expect from your advisor, understanding the tax implications. There's a scam spotter tool that gives you some highlights, some flags when certain circumstances. A COVID-19 fraud alert section. So there's investingquestion.ca is another great website managed by the OSC. I know it's a lot of information. As I mentioned, this presentation will be provided to everybody to reference. There's lots of questions come up, and you can do a search, and if you don't find answers to your questions, then you're always welcome to contact the OSC Inquiries and Contact Center. So we try and offer all sorts of different avenues to keep people in touch. We're on Twitter, on Facebook, YouTube. You can sign up for an investor newsletter at getsmarteraboutmoney.ca. The newsletter comes out regularly. I think it's weekly, if I'm not mistaken. Covers timely topics, has lots of good resources, investor warnings, and lots of other good information. So as I mentioned, the phone number is 1-877-785-155, and the website I've been talking about is smarteraboutmoney.ca, or you can always the OSC website at osc.gov.on.ca. So reached the point where we can take some questions. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm just trying to find my trying to see if I can find the chat box here.
I've asked everybody to unmute, and some people are doing it. There we go. How about if I start with a question, then everybody else can jump in after that? Do you want to stop sharing, Michael, your screen?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find that on my screen here.
My question while you're looking is, would you also look after when you get phone calls from, for example, Visa, that they start 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, how to get that to stop, because they're also scammers?
Our difficulty is you can block certain phone numbers. You can call, your.
Yep.
You muted everyone, Anna.
I did. I muted you because there was so much background noise. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Difficulty is that the fraudsters use different technology to mask the number they're calling from. So what they sometimes do is they're able to actually make it look on your call display like they're calling from a local number. It'll, if like in here in Burlington, our number starts with 331. So I'll see a call come up with 331 or 335, 336, and I'll think of somebody in the neighborhood or in the local community, and I'll pick it up, and of course it's just somebody wanting to clean my ducks or Visa or I'm going to go to jail because I haven't paid my taxes, something like that. So it's difficult to know. So yeah, years ago you could block a particular number from somebody from a scam organization, and they wouldn't bother you again. Or you could put your number on the no call list that's registered with the CFTC in Ottawa, but that doesn't apply anymore because of the technology. So, but the bottom line is your doesn't call you over the phone and want you to give out any personal information. They may call you with a warning about your account. They may call you for some other reason, but Visa or your bank, they're not going to call you asking for personal information over the phone. So that's something you just never do. Like I mentioned before, if you think it's, you believe it's bank calling, get a person's name and call them back. Look up a legitimate number for your local branch or your bank or whoever it might be, whatever government agency. Call the number you know to be legitimate and ask for the person who you were speaking with. And that way you have a guarantee that the person you're dealing with is in fact, a legitimate person.
Thank you for that. I know that Richard has a question. So Richard, if you'd like to unmute and ask the question.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative and for the important work that you do protecting people. I wanted to I retired about 3 years ago. I was 30 years with a large insurance company and worked on the investment side, whatnot. So just a quick comment. A lot of these people you mentioned, you don't know them, but many times what I've seen over the years is people hear about a great investment from their brother-in-law, the plumber, or whatever it is, and because they trust that person, that why would they steer them wrong? And the other person is often very sincere in trying to help, but as a result of that, sometimes people wind up making some financial moves that are less than in their best interest. So just a quick thought of working with somebody that is registered and knowledgeable, because people do tend to get really excited about things that sound too good to be true.
Absolutely, and yeah, thanks for that, Richard. And sadly, it's something that we see every day, literally. That's why getting back to checking the registration status of the people who are pitching these investment schemes is so important. you know, as I mentioned, if somebody's properly registered with a securities regulator to, you know, if it's in the case of mutual funds, then there's the Mutual Fund Dealers Association. If it's an investment advisor, they might be registered with IRA, the Investment Industry Regulatory Authority. But those registration databases are maintained on Smarter About Money or on the OSC website. So it's very important to check the registration status. And you know what drives sort of one of the affinity type frauds that I described. We see it early often where, you know, they offer extra incentives if you can bring your neighbors or your family members or your friends into the fold, so to speak. So yeah, it's a good thought. So
does anybody else have a question? If you just put your hand up, I'll try to
I have a
unmute you.
comment.
Okay, Rowena.
Yeah, I just have a comment about the local phone numbers calling you. I don't pick up anymore unless I know the phone number. And if I don't know the phone number, I figure it can go to my messages, and someone can leave me a message if they really want me, and I'll phone them right back. But yesterday I did pick up because it was from a local 258 number. But I won't do that again because it was the visa thing. That usually phones very early in the morning.
And the thing is, it's in all of our DNA to be polite and answer the phone and say hello and hear them out. And you know, it's just not in our DNA to hang up on somebody, but you have to do that in these cases. You can't because the longer you let them ramble on, it can be very, very convincing. Yeah. And they lure people in, people from all walks of life. I mean, I've seen people really highly educated, you know, switched on, plugged in people get sucked into these scams because they took the time to listen. And you just have to be very, very wary. And you know, it's a sad commentary on the way things are nowadays. But you know, get their name, get a number, verify the number to confirm the person you're speaking with is in fact representing the organization they say they're representing. And chances are they're not. But you know, do your due diligence. There are huge red flags when you get these unsolicited phone calls, unsolicited emails, text messages.
Oh, you've frozen.
Yeah.
Anna?
Yeah, he's frozen, but hopefully he'll get unfrozen momentarily. I see Doug waving his hand, and I thought I saw John. Is that correct? So as soon as he gets unfrozen, we'll ask John and then Doug. And maybe he won't get unfrozen. Michael? Michael, are you back? He was concerned about his connection before he came on, actually. Well, he'll likely just reconnect back in. So while we're waiting, what's the feedback? Was everybody learn at least one tidbit of information? David said yes. Yeah. Yep, good. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he'll be right back. So let's just give him a few seconds so that we can get those last couple questions answered.
Well, I don't have near as much money as Doug Hughes, so I don't have to worry about anything. So
Roger, you just have to worry about our Probus account then.
well, that's what I live on.
Oh, okay.
Hey, what is this scam about Visa? I don't think I've ever heard about it.
You don't get a phone call saying, this is a recording. We're calling you to advise your credit card has been compromised. I don't usually stay on once I hear Visa, then I just hang up, but that's what it is.
I've never received that.
And it always says what time it was compromised, and it's usually 5 o'clock in the morning. So your visa was used at 5 o'clock in the morning too, and then I hang up too. So
Yeah, but it's, and the calls are really, really early in the morning. They're, they can start at 6:30 and then you run from one end of the house to the other to try to answer the phone. And I'm always feeling bad in case somebody, falls and hurts themselves as a result.